Everybody, welcome to the Brain Health Kitchen podcast. I'm Dr. Annie Fenn. I'm your host, and I am so excited to welcome you to our very first episode. So I started this podcast because, well, many reasons, but number one, I've been writing about brain health for more than 10 years. And in this time period, I've had the opportunity to meet amazing people in the brain health world: neurologists, neuroscientists, dietitians, caregivers, people involved in every aspect of brain health. And now I want to be able to bring all of this expertise to you. So just in season one, we're going to have a great lineup of brain health experts in discussion with me about the things that you need to know about how to take care of your brain every day. And for today's episode, I want you to meet my co-host and the podcast producer, Jenny Shilling. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Annie.
We've been working on this behind the scenes for how long?
Months.
Months and months and months. It's really exciting to
Mhm.
be able to bring these conversations to everyone. Jenny and I actually met when she was a student at my Harvard Women's Brain Health course, right, Jenny?
That's right. About a year ago, I took Annie's class. I'm in a master's program at Harvard, and Annie was teaching a women's brain health class. And I had been following you, Annie, and reading your Substack for a couple years even before that. And so when I saw your name pop up on the syllabus, I was pretty excited.
Oh, and that was so great. It was so great to connect with you as a student. And then you got in touch afterwards and we started working together. And we had this idea that we should bring all the brain health experts that I've been in contact with over many years here on the podcast so that everyone can learn from them too. So it's been really, really fun and exciting. And I can't wait to share with you guys everything that we have coming up. So should we tell them, Jenny, a little bit about what's in store for season one?
Yeah, it's actually the lineup for season one is sort of incredible. Let's talk a little bit about some of our guests and what they're going to be talking about.
Okay, so one of my guests is Dr. Julie Frattantoni. She's a cognitive neuroscientist. She's working on a book about cognitive longevity in terms of how to keep your thinking skills and memory healthy as you get older.
Yeah, she's amazing. One topic that we've heard a lot from your readers is menopause, perimenopause, and hormones. So we brought on an expert in that.
Yes, if you are on Substack, you probably know Dr. Lauren Stryker. She's an OBGYN and a menopause expert. She has been my go-to source for what's new in menopause for many, many years. We went into everything you need to know about hormone therapy, which we now call MHT. We talked about controversies in hormone therapy, like starting it over the age of 60 for some women who've never been on it before. Lauren actually has a podcast that's all about women's sexual health. It was great to be able to pick Lauren's brain for more than an hour. We also had Tommy Wood, who is a PhD MD with a book coming out called The Stimulated Mind. And Tommy has turned his focus in neuroscience to preventing dementia. And that's what his new book is all about. So it was so fun to talk to Tommy. For our next episode, Jenny, we have Dr. Ray Dorsey, who's a Parkinson's expert. He's a neurologist. He wrote a book with Dr. Michael Oken called The Parkinson's Plan, which is a New York Times bestseller. If you read my Substack, you may recall my interview with Dr. Dorsey. This episode is so important. There is new information about how to prevent Parkinson's disease that is completely different than what in the medical field we used to think. So that is a definitely must listen. Another one that's coming up is my interview with Dr. Drew Ramsey, who is a nutritional psychiatrist. He's one of the first psychiatrists to really embrace the impact of food in terms of taking care of people with mental health challenges. His last book, Healing the Modern Brain, is one of my favorites. You also might know him by his other books, including Eat to Beat, Depression, and Anxiety.
He's really a great guest, and you'll enjoy that one.
Honestly, Jenny, every single guest that we've had on, after we're done recording, Jenny and I just sit here and chat about, wow, isn't she amazing? Or, oh my gosh, I love him. I love the information he's sharing. So we're very enthusiastic about all this information we are going to be bringing to you in season one.
Yeah, and something special we're going to do is once a month, our episode is going to be an Ask Annie episode where Annie's paid Substack subscribers can leave a voicemail or send a note to us with their specific questions on a topic. And that will be the first Friday of every month.
Yes, I'm really excited about this because when you get a post of mine on Substack, there'll be a link where you can record a question and we can play them on the air if you want, and I'll tackle those questions on air. They're going to be linked to mini series that we've covered on the Substack. The first one is going to be about brain health supplements. So I'm excited about that. Now, that's a perk for paying subscribers. The podcast itself is free for everyone, thanks to our generous and amazing founding sponsors. I am grateful to have two of the most trusted brands in brain health as founding sponsors of this podcast. First, we are proudly supported by NeuroReserve, a brain health nutrition company dedicated to bringing us high-quality, science-backed supplements, including Relevate, a brain-specific blend of omega-3 fatty acids, and Revanta, a pure-grade creatine. In fact, if I had to personally choose just two brain health supplements to take, it would be Relevate and Revanta. I've known the team at NeuroReserve for many years, and you can learn more about their commitment to brain health and research-backed nutritional products at neuroreserve.com. This podcast is also proudly supported by our co-founding sponsor, Better Brain, the world's first brain health and dementia prevention program covered by insurance. So I have a confession. I went through a full brain health workup recently. Blood markers, metabolic panels, the works. And I found things I had no idea about. My cholesterol had drifted up, my homocysteine was elevated, I had a B vitamin absorption issue that had never showed up on any lab I had ever done. And I'm a doctor. So I worked with a Better Brain coach, found a few small key changes to make, and I'm already seeing improvement. That's the reason I wanted them as founding sponsor of this podcast. They're doing what I've been telling people to do for years, except they actually have the system to make it happen. They offer the science-backed Brain Health Lab panel and expert coaching to build your personalized action plan covered by insurance. Most people pay $0 out of pocket for these sessions. Check it out at betterbrain.com/Annie. So for our first episode today, Jenny and I are going to be talking about neuroprotective foods. Now, if you've been reading Brain Health Kitchen, Substack, or if you have my book, The Brain Health Kitchen, Preventing Alzheimer's Through Food, you know that there are 10 brain healthy food groups. And this is such cornerstone material to everything I've been teaching over the last 10 years, and the science has just gotten stronger and stronger. So we're going to walk you through my Brain Health Kitchen food pyramid, and we're going to dive into some of these food groups in a little bit more detail than we've gone into before.
I thought we would start with your helping us understand what the term neuroprotective means.
Yeah, so this is a fairly new word that gets bounced around sometimes. Neuroprotective means that certain foods possess bioactive substances. We can think of them as nutrients, something like that, that actually promote brain health in specific ways. One really simple example would be blueberries, which we all know are good for the brain. And it's one of the foods that we'll be talking about. But blueberries possess a bioactive substance called anthocyanins. And these anthocyanins pass the blood-brain barrier. They get to your brain. They block oxidative stress. They quell inflammation. They're doing very specific good things for the brain. So any food that possesses, these nutrients that have been very well studied, that are beneficial for brain and sometimes gut, we consider them neuroprotective.
And if someone eats a brain supportive way for, say, 20 years, what processes in the body are we influencing? Is it inflammation? Is it your vascular system? Is it your neurons? What are we affecting?
Gosh, inflammation is that buzzword that is going around so much now. Everything is based in inflammation, right? But it's kind of true. Inflammation is probably the root cause of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that. It's very, very early beginnings, 20 to 30 years before symptoms occur. There's probably inflammation that's in the mix. We know that things that, impact our brains, we get inflammation from all these different areas. We get it from air pollution. We get it from inflammatory foods like fast foods and ultra-processed foods. We get it from stress. We get it from environmental toxins. It's like our brains are always being bombarded with, whatever menu of inflammatory things are out there in the modern world, which is a lot. And so I think of neuroprotective food as like this shield that we have. There's actually one study that is really illuminating, jumping ahead to the fish and seafood category real quick, but it was a study done in women living in London and who were living in areas of high air pollution. And it showed that in air pollution, I should add, has been strongly linked to dementia later in life. And in this study, they showed that women who ate more fish and seafood, they had more of a protective effect on their brain. Even though they were exposed to pollution, the fish and seafood
Mm.
seemed to be a buffer and reduce that risk. So that's just one example of how we think about food in this process of helping protect our brains.
And zooming out from individual ingredients, what does an overall brain healthy eating pattern look like? Is it individual foods that you would recommend, or is it more of an overall diet?
This is something I grappled with a lot when I was writing my book, The Brain Health Kitchen. And so that's why I came up with the Brain Health Kitchen food guidelines and a food pyramid to go with it. It's basically a snapshot of what a brain healthy diet looks like in the course of a week. We can share that with you. It's been making the rounds on social media, and it's definitely a centerpiece of my book because it's a way to explain these foods in the context of like how a normal person eats. It's a way to help you understand how you can access these foods. And the Brain Health Kitchen food pyramid is divided into 10 brain healthy food groups.
Let's dive in. Of all plant foods, berries seem to hold a special place in cognitive aging research. What earned them that status?
Well, first of all, to become one of the 10 brain healthy food groups, a food has to have tons of scientific data to show that it's beneficial for the brain. One of the landmark studies about berries, it comes from the Nurses' Health Study, and they looked at women over the age of 65 who consumed berries, how much they consumed, how many years they did so, and how they performed on memory testing. And lo and behold, the women who ate more berries, they did better on memory test. And so we know that it has a particular benefit for this aspect of cognitive function. This has been shown in other age groups as well. There's studies looking at blueberry juice in adolescents and young adults in terms of doing better on tests or, just like specific memory tasks. We know that berries have a perfect combination of fiber and low sugar in a package that's very nutrient dense. So when you eat a berry and it's sweet, that sweetness is balanced by a lot of fiber that's good for your gut health, that also tempers that sugar from being absorbed quickly into the bloodstream. So it's all these factors that have to do with like the food matrix. So berries are pretty much a slam dunk when it comes to brain health. It's the only fruit that is recognized as official brain healthy food. Now, this doesn't mean that other fruits aren't good for you. Of course they are. I would call out citrus, like oranges, lemons, limes, things like that. Especially the peel is rich in anthocyanins, another one, these brain health nutrients. I would also call out apples and pears, which have been shown to be high in flavonoids, which are good for the brain. So other fruits are also good, but berries is the only one that has like all this data to say that, yeah, we should all be eating berries pretty much every day.
How much would you say a day? What do you recommend?
Well, this depends on the study that you're quoting. For example, in the Mind diet is a spin-off of the Mediterranean diet. And Dr. Martha Claire Morris, who came up with this with her team at Rush University, they went with 2 half-cup servings a week of berries. And that was a minimal amount that they found that could reduce a person's risk of developing Alzheimer's later. Now, in my book, in my food guidelines, I actually increased it to daily, just 1/2 cup daily or most days, as many as you can. And that's based on the memory testing data. Because I don't know anyone who doesn't like berries. I think they're really easy to introduce. Frozen ones are just as good as fresh.
Yeah, frozen. I've enjoyed adding those when I can't find fresh. And I think at one point we talked about maybe grapes being a slightly less expensive berry. Do, do you recommend those?
Yeah, I love grapes. Grapes are actually berries. And in my book, I have a whole chapter about berries. There's a chapter for each of the 10 brain healthy food groups. And in the berries chapter, I have a dish that's become one of the most popular recipes in the book. It is a halibut dish that you roast in the oven with a roasted grape sauce. It's really, really good. Really easy. Really easy. So
Yum.
yeah, grapes. Grapes are good.
All right. Our second group is leafy greens. And it's interesting. They're given their own category in the Mind diet apart from vegetables. Why are leafy greens so important?
Right. So leafy greens or leafy green vegetables are part of all of the brain protective diets that we have. So if we back up 1 minute, there are a handful of dietary patterns that have been proven to protect the brain from Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. One is the Mediterranean diet, which I think a lot of our listeners will be familiar with. And the others are Mediterranean diet spin-offs, like the Mind diet or the Green Med diet. So these are the brain protective patterns. Okay. Now, if you picture the Mediterranean dietary pattern, you probably can see all these plant foods at the bottom of the pyramid. There's vegetables, there's leafy greens. Leafy greens became singled out as its own brain healthy food group in the Mind diet. Okay, this was based on the Mediterranean diet, but Dr. Martha Claire Morris, the lead researcher on that study, she pulled leafy greens out because she had been studying the impact of eating leafy greens on brain health for decades. And what she had found was that this singular food group was especially potent to protect the brain. Specifically, it helped reduce loss of brain volume over time, which is incredible. So
That's
what you'll see
incredible.
in a Mind diet is you'll see that leafy greens is pulled out as its own food group, separate from vegetables. And in my food guidelines, I did the same thing, just to sort of, bring home the point that yes, you should eat your vegetables, but you should eat your leafy greens and you should consider them a separate food group.
Okay, what would you consider leafy greens? Just name some examples.
Well, I consider salad greens, but the dark leafy greens are going to be much more potent in these neuroprotective things that we've been talking about. So the dark leafy greens that I really love include arugula, kale, Swiss chard, watercress, spinach, of course, even baby kale is fine, and then all of the lettuces. And then I also include tender herbs. Like, when you're making
Mm.
pesto, and maybe use make it with cilantro. So the stems, the tender stems and the leaves of that cilantro, I consider a leafy green.
Mhm. Are microgreens considered leafy greens?
Microgreens are amazing. Yes, there's not a ton of data on microgreens, but there is one small paper that showed that they are 40 times more potent in these antioxidants than, say, the nascent plant. And a microgreen is just say it's a kale plant at a certain stage of development where it has, 2 or 3 little leaves. We've all seen them, but it's true. They're extremely nutrient dense, extremely good for you, really pretty, can make your dishes look beautiful and very photogenic, but also like very, very good for your brain.
I've grown my own microgreens. I do that here in my kitchen. It's actually a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I used to grow them in my kitchen too, and I don't know why I don't have a pot, a pot of them growing right now. It's so easy to do.
I know. Yeah, because every day you're watching your container get more and more full of these microgreens. It's really fun. And I'm not a gardener, so I get a real kick out of it.
Yeah, I've even put my pot of microgreens as a centerpiece at a dinner party and then passed around scissors and let everyone just snip off their own.
Oh, that's fun.
It's fun.
All right, our third category is vegetables in general. So now we're going more broadly to vegetables. What do you have to say about our brain health and vegetables?
Well, vegetables are good for us. We all know this. My pet peeve about some dietary guidelines is they say eat your vegetables every day. And I think that's great. But some vegetables are more nutrient dense than others when it comes to the brain. So I just like to give people more information. Not all vegetables are created equal. So I have a separate food pyramid for every food group on my Brain Health Kitchen food pyramid. And in the vegetable one, you'll see the most nutrient dense ones at the bottom. And what I think are best for the brain include cruciferous vegetables, number one. And these are broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Kale is actually a cruciferous vegetable, but we're going to keep it over in leafy greens. Brussels sprouts, all of these things are cruciferous vegetables. And they are particularly good because they contain sulforaphane, which is an antioxidant that we know is highly anti-inflammatory. They also contain a lot of fiber. So cruciferous vegetables, number one. Number two, colorful vegetables. When you go to the grocery store, the farmer's market, definitely choose your vegetables based on color and variety, because every single different color represents a different plant pigment that is actually a brain health nutrient. The colors in these vegetables are actually brain health nutrients. They're called flavonoids. There's thousands of them. Anthocyanins, like we talked about in berries, is a subcategory of that. So you want to choose all the different colors. And so, for example, if you love cauliflower, like I do, and you always get the white cauliflower, you might pick up a green one or a purple one. It's going to give you a different, phytonutrient, basically. Or if you always get yellow peppers, then branch out and get some red peppers sometimes, even some green peppers. Choose the foods you like, but also try to be a little bit more diverse in your choices so you're hitting all these colors.
When we hear 30 different plants a week, is that part of this conversation around each plant gives you a little something different? Instead of repeating the same salad every night, change it up?
It's the same idea, but it's coming from a fiber point of view. So
Okay.
the 30 plants a week comes from an actual study called the American Gut Project, one of the largest studies ever done. It was like a citizen scientist study where people donate basically their poop, and it gets looked at and put into the data bank. Really amazing, very successful data. And what they found that is the diversity of plants that we eat is most beneficial for our gut microbiomes. So this goes back to the gut health and gut microbiomes, which of course is really important for brain health. So I quote that a lot. I recommend if people aren't eating a lot of fiber or not getting a lot of diversity in plants, they're just eating the green broccoli every single time, then, it's a really useful exercise to keep a checklist. And I have one that I can share with everybody in the show notes where you just try to keep track of how many different plants you eat in the course of a week. And if you're really diversified, mostly plant-based eater, you're going to get to 30 in a day or two, right? But if you're only reaching for like the broccoli and the onion and maybe an apple, like you have your standbys and you never really branch out, then it can be a wake-up call that you need to diversify your diet. It's really important. But this all comes down to fiber.
Mushrooms are not actually vegetables, but I know they hold a special place in your heart. Can you tell us about mushrooms?
Right. I included mushrooms. I call it an honorary vegetable. We all know they're fungi because I'm really interested in the data coming out of countries where they have mushroom eating cultures showing that eating mushrooms twice a week, small serving, like a half cup cooked twice a week, has been shown to reduce dementia rates by as much as 40, 50, 60%, depending on the study. These are studies from Japan, Northern Italy, Singapore. It has to do with traditional diets and what mushrooms add to that diet. And I feel like there's not as much research right now about eating mushrooms like that. There's a lot of mushroom extracts out there. There's a lot of interest in lion's mane. There was an animal study in rats that showed that this lion's mane's extract, lion's mane's those kind of big fluffy mushrooms. They can be really expensive. They're really delicious. But when they give the extract to a mouse or a rat, it actually helped their hippocampus grow, which is the memory center of the brain. So this has not been translated to humans. And I think lion's mane's mushrooms and all mushrooms are very, very good for you. But we see more of it in the supplement realm. But I would love to get people just to eat mushrooms at least twice a week. They provide two nutrients that we really don't get from other foods. One is glutathione. The other one is ergothioneine. And these are nutrients that come from soil. So when you eat mushrooms, it's kind of like eating dirt, right?
Hmm.
And that's why we don't get these nutrients from a lot of our vegetables because our soil is often depleted.
All right. Well, on that, before we move on to our fourth category, I'd like us to talk about buying organic food versus just fresh food. And It's not always available. It can be more expensive. But after we had a conversation with Dr. Ray Dorsey, which we will be airing later this month, I think you and I were really thinking very carefully about organic. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Ray Dorsey is a Parkinson's expert, and he's published data on the link between pesticide residue, pesticide exposure in water and air, and Parkinson's disease. So, this is one of the things that I've changed my mind about in 2026. And it is whether or not I should buy organic everything or just strategically pick fruits and vegetables that are best chosen organic. Okay. Now, the old thinking, which still has some validity, is that, we want people to eat more fruits and vegetables, right? This is the backbone of the brain healthy diet. It's the backbone of a gut healthy diet. Most people are not eating enough whole foods. 70% of the US caloric intake comes from ultra processed foods. So, number one, people need to eat more whole foods, whether it's organic or not. So, that's always been sort of the stance, is that I don't want to deter people from choosing whole foods because the organic is more expensive. Okay, it doesn't fit in a lot of budgets, and sometimes the organic food doesn't look as good either, and so there's a deterrent. So that's why not saying whether organic is all that important has always fit into this messaging. We just want people to eat more whole food. But now in 2026, I think we can safely say that it would be best for your brain to choose organic food all the time, whenever you can, whenever it's available. And the reason is there has been a real risk of being exposed to pesticide residues in these foods, on these foods that are conventionally grown, that have been linked to Parkinson's disease. We think that Parkinson's starts in the gut, and exposure to pesticide residue in conventional produce, especially, has an impact even decades before symptoms arise. So my new thinking is, please buy organic as much as possible. Whether you're buying conventional or organic produce, just please wash it thoroughly. Even organic produce can harbor some pesticide residues because it's near a farm that's not organic, or, any number of reasons.
Yeah, great advice. Our fourth category is whole grains. And I think this is a polarizing topic because people often think, oh, I should stay away from too many carbohydrates. And I think we would clarify that that's maybe simple carbohydrates, but whole grains are different. Why do they make the cut in a neuroprotective dietary pattern?
Well, one reason is fiber. Whole grains are one of the best sources of fiber that we have. And when we're looking at a brain healthy diet, fiber is a very important factor. I can back up a little bit to the 4 F's of brain healthy food: flavonoids, which we talked about, these plant pigments, flavonoids; brain friendly fats, these include omega-3 fatty acids; fiber is the third one, and then fit. So fiber became one of my 4 F's because it is crucial for a brain healthy diet. We absolutely have to feed our gut microbiota enough fiber for them to thrive. And if our gut microbiota don't thrive, then our brains don't age very well. So fiber is very important, and whole grains provides that. The problem with whole grains is that 98% of people in the US consume whole grains in a refined form. That's all-purpose white flour, it's hamburger buns, it's hot dog buns, it's flour tortillas, it's bagels, it's white bread, pizza crust. So they're part of the ultra-processed food sector that we want you to limit or avoid. But truly whole grain food is very good for you. This includes oats, so oatmeal, especially oats in its
Like steel cut oatmeal, probably.
yeah, like the least
Yeah.
processed form of oats is the best. So like oats come from a groat, right? Which is like this gnarly sort of, it's got a sheath, it's got a husk, all the things. It hasn't had anything to do to it. And then they take the husk off, which they remove some of the fiber so that it's edible, and that's an oat. And then those oats could be cut and rolled, like it looks like in our oatmeal, steel cut, which are less refined. All of these things are really good for you. But if you eat them in their least refined form, it's better because they contain more fiber. So like steel cut oats would be on the top of the fiber spectrum, oat milk would be on the bottom.
Like the microwave oats, they're highly processed. And I think people might say, well, gosh, I don't have time to cook steel cut oatmeal. But if you cook a batch at the beginning of your week, it actually refrigerates and reheats in the microwave really well. So you're just making it one time. And it's inexpensive too.
That's such a good advice. Meal prep your oatmeal. And what that does too, when you cook oats and then you put it in the fridge and then you eat it later, like day, 2, 3 days later, it develops resistant starch. And that's the type of starch that gets to your lower intestine to feed the gut microbes there. They don't see much fiber down there. Our food is processed enough that, there's not a lot of fiber getting to the lower intestine. And that's really crucial for gut health. So I love the idea of prepping. I also love the idea of doing overnight oats, which also is a way to cook your oats easily just by mixing them up and putting them in the fridge. And they develop resistant starch. And, if you have to grab instant oatmeal, like every once in a while, I'll be in an airport. And the only thing that I think is going to be like an okay meal would be like the instant oatmeal at, Pete's or Starbucks. And it's fine. But like, you don't want to have that be your breakfast every day.
Yeah. Our fifth category is a category that I've been focused on. I think it's easy, it's inexpensive, and I'm just trying to add it to my plate every day and encouraging my kids to do the same. So this category is legumes.
So legumes are one of the food groups that are common to all the blue zones in the world. These are the places where people tend to live the longest. It's the places on earth that have the most centenarians. So whether someone's living in Costa Rica or Sardinia or Okinawa, Japan, beans and legumes are consumed almost daily in these cultures. It's very much part of traditional foods that we study that are shown to be very health promoting, both from a heart and brain health standpoint. People that don't grow up eating a lot of beans and lentils tend to not love them because they haven't cultivated the microbiota in their gut that know how to digest them. So it can be really difficult when, you say, okay, I didn't grow up eating lentils. I never ate beans when I was growing up. I'm going to start eating it now because I know it's good for my brain. It's important to introduce them slowly and say maybe 1 serving a week, work up to 2 to 3 servings a week. A half cup cooked is one portion. And, your gut will learn how to digest this food. And it's extremely important. They have many health benefits, one of which is they help lower blood cholesterol. Another is they help keep blood glucose that's getting absorbed during the same meal from spiking, keeps blood sugar levels. Another thing that these beans and legumes do is when you eat a meal rich in lentils, say, there's a second meal effect. So by the time that, this fiber gets down to your lower intestine, the gut microbiota get to work on it. And part of the magic of the gut microbiota is they synthesize certain bioactive substances that are good for our health. For example, they may synthesize something that's an appetite suppressant. So a natural appetite suppressant that's made by your gut microbiota. So this has been shown to be called the second meal effect or the lentil effect. You have beans at night with your dinner and you're not that hungry the next morning. You may not be hungry until lunch. And this is because your gut microbiota are working on it. And this is all good. That's why people who eat beans and lentils tend not to have problems with their weight.
That's incredible. And this is another category where you can rehydrate dried legumes at the beginning of the week and have them in a glass container in your refrigerator and then just heat them up with a meal, right?
Yes. Yes. You can cook your beans from scratch. You can soak them or not soak them. You can open a can and
Mhm.
rinse, like for white beans, black beans. That's what I do a lot. You can make lentils from scratch. I call lentils the fast food of the bean world because it's just as quick to cook them from scratch, about 20 minutes in boiling water, as it is to open a can and do something with them. So there's lots of ways you can incorporate these foods into your diet. If you have cooked lentils, cooked white beans, whatever kind of bean you like on hand in your fridge, you could add a scoop to your salad. Okay. You could
Mhm.
scoop, to dinner if you're having fish or chicken, tofu. You can blend it into a bean dip, like a hummus. You can make from any bean. There's lots of things you can do with beans.
And don't forget edamame, which kids tend to love, and hummus.
Yes. Yes. And these are 2 food items that you can buy at the grocery store that are minimally processed foods that are super good for you. There are a lot of hummus products that are just chickpeas, olive oil, salt, garlic, maybe some spices, really clean ingredient list. I'm sure there's some junky ones too, but you can find decent hummus at the grocery store, and it's a great thing to snack on, especially for kids. And then you can also buy edamame, either in their pod or not, in the freezer section, and you can pop those in the microwave. And it's a great snack. It's high in protein and high in isoflavones, which is another flavonoid.
Great. Our sixth category is nuts and seeds. And I just love that this is a whole brain healthy category and really gives you
Yes, me
license to
too.
snack on something that's really delicious.
So nuts made it to the list straight from the cardiovascular literature. We knew years ago when a paper was published that snacking on nuts, about a quarter cup, like a small handful, 4 to 5 times a week, reduced the risk of heart attack and stroke. And we think that's because of their high vitamin E content and their monounsaturated fats. So snacking on nuts is a good heart healthy habit. And a lot of these food groups, these neuroprotective foods for brain healthy eating, come from the concept what's good for your heart is good for your brain, because there's huge overlap between cardiovascular health and brain health. So that's one reason why nuts was kind of a no-brainer, when these guidelines were being created. I added seeds because a lot of people are not allergic, and seeds are also amazing in their own right. They have the same fat profile as nuts. They provide a lot of flavonoids, especially the colorful ones like hemp seeds, and they provide a lot of fiber and protein. For example, a quarter cup of hemp seeds can give you 10 grams of protein. So if you're adding that to your smoothie or adding that to your yogurt in the morning, you're really boosting your protein intake, which is also good for your overall health and brain health, while, including these neuroprotective foods.
Yeah, it's easy to add chia seeds to a smoothie or ground flaxseed. And uh, I actually don't have great glucose control. It's just the way I was born. But if I put those in my smoothies, my glucose is totally smooth and flat. I don't get big spikes. And it's because it's just packed with fiber and healthy fat.
Exactly, exactly. It's this great combination, nutrients, fat, fiber, protein that's very beneficial for glucose control, very beneficial for lowering cholesterol as well, like we talked about with the beans. Yeah, nuts and seeds are great. So my favorite seeds would be like hemp seeds. I love, I use them in pestos, I use them in smoothies. I use them so many different ways. I also like chia seeds. I like to make chia seed pudding. I often put quinoa, another whole grain that's actually a seed. I like to put quinoa in my chia seed pudding to give it a little bit more oomph too and more protein.
Oh, I've never done that. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I have a recipe for that we can share. And I love pumpkin seeds. They're a great source of
Uh,
magnesium as well as potassium.
They're delicious on a salad. I love just sprinkling them. You get a crunch.
They're delicious. You can snack on them. And then of the nuts, I also have a pyramid for nuts and seeds in terms of which ones are most nutrient dense. Walnuts get a lot of attention because they're so high in vitamin E, and they're great. Walnuts are absolutely amazing nuts. If you love them, please eat them. But also almonds, cashews, pistachios, all of these are great nuts to choose. A variety, just like we were talking about with the plants, variety of nuts and seeds is the way to go.
Right. Well, your seventh category is fish and seafood. I think we all think of fish as an important food for our health. Why is it a brain healthy food?
Yeah, fish and seafood is a really important brain healthy food category. It started with observational data, decades ago, people looking at, what's the composition of the diet and does that predict whether or not someone's going to get Alzheimer's disease or another dementia? And it was found that people that eat fish are more likely to age without Alzheimer's disease. That was like the
Oh,
earliest basic finding. So why is it? What is it in fish? And this has borne out through the ages. Actually, the science is getting stronger and stronger that fish and seafood is an important part of the brain healthy diet because it provides omega-3 fatty acids, which are a certain type of fat, a brain friendly fat in my 4Fs. It's a certain type of fat that is really important for the brain. And there are also omega-3 fatty acids in plant foods. There's one called ALA, but it doesn't get to the brain. So the ones that are most crucial for brain health are DHA and EPA, which come from fish. So this particular type of omega-3 fatty acid passes the blood-brain barrier because of its phospholipid structure. It's anti-inflammatory in the brain, but it's also structural. It actually incorporates itself into the membranes of the blood-brain barrier to help strengthen it. Okay. One big idea in brain health is, you have a blood-brain barrier, which is this, layers, like cellular layers where you don't want certain things to get into the brain, like toxins or viruses or bacteria. And so you want this to be really strong. In Alzheimer's disease, this blood-brain barrier gets really leaky. So eating fish and seafood or taking DHA or EPA as a supplement, for example, can help strengthen this blood-brain barrier. So very important. And if you don't eat fish or seafood, totally fine, because this is one of those food groups that you can take a supplement instead, as long as it's fish-based or algae-based.
Yeah, and in our supplement episode, our Ask Annie for our paid subscribers, we will definitely be talking about omega-3.
Yeah, and I just did a couple articles on the Substack about omega-3 fatty acids, how to choose a supplement, what to look for, and how to get it through fish. I was surprised the last time I looked at this literature that you actually need to eat a lot of fish to get
Yeah.
the amount of DHA that our brains need. You basically should be eating, a serving of wild-caught salmon or something, or its equivalent, about once a day. And most people just are not eating that much fish.
Yeah. So we supplement. Okay,
Mhm.
terrific. Our eighth category I love. As a gal who grew up in the 1980s, fats are a no-no. It's just like embedded in our brains. And you and I have been working together a year, and I love this new information that not only are there good fats, but we should be eating them. They're actually positive. So let's talk about our healthy fats.
Yes, yes, I love the topic of fats. So most people probably don't realize this, but extra virgin olive oil is an official brain healthy food group. It's a big part of the Mediterranean dietary pattern. It's part of traditional diets. It's included as one of the 10 brain healthy food groups in the Mind Diet study. All the brain protective diets have incorporated extra virgin olive oil. No other oils, just extra virgin olive oil. So there's something special about this oil. But if we back up a tiny bit, I love what you just said. I don't want people to think about fat as good or bad. I think that is outdated thinking. What we should think about is all the different fats have a function in our body and our brain. And the balance, the just right balance is the key. An optimal brain healthy diet, so we think in 2026, is 80% monounsaturated fats. These are the fats you get from olive oil, from nuts, from avocados, okay?
Uh-huh.
Things like that we've all talked about. And it's about 15% polyunsaturated fats, like omega-3s we get from fish. And it's less than 10%, really less than 5% for most people, saturated fats, like you get from dairy products or meat or chicken. Okay. There's no trans fats. That's the one thing that I can definitely call out as bad. Anything
Yeah.
that's a man-made fat is going to be bad in my book for the brain. So we've got this 80% mono, 15% poly, 5% or less saturated fat. They're all good. You need something from all of these fats, but the ratio is also crucial. So when you switch to extra virgin olive oil as your primary cooking oil, it's the main thing you have in your kitchen. It's the main thing you cook with. There's very few other oils in your pantry. You're shifting the dietary fat profile of what you eat into this monounsaturated predominant balance. And that's one of the reasons why it has borne out in so many studies to be a brain healthy food. The other reason is olive oil is different than all other oils because it contains polyphenols. Polyphenols are like those flavonoids, those anthocyanins we were talking about. Polyphenols are anti-inflammatory. They come from plants, extremely important for gut health and for brain health. And when you consume olive oil, you are flooding your brain with these polyphenols, some of which have been particularly found to block amyloid plaque deposition in the brain, block oxidative stress, reduce inflammation in other ways, to have particular brain health actions.
Yeah. Whenever I'm cooking now, I think where I would have used butter, I just substitute for olive oil every time. And it's very delicious. You have some really good Substack articles on olive oil, how to choose olive oil, how to look on the label for when it was harvested. And we don't have time today to go into it, but it does matter that the olive oil is young-ish. It's you're eating it within a year or two of it being harvested.
On into the olive oil business, so I've learned so much besides the brain
Yeah,
health.
Annie actually sources her own olive oil in Italy from a single orchard, which is the way to do it, and it's delicious and it's high in polyphenols, which not all olive oils are as high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so this high polyphenol olive oil, this whole the Brain Health Kitchen extra virgin olive oil came from my love of olive oil, its place in the science, and how I was realizing that most people are just not consuming very good olive oil. And it's just because we just don't have a lot of great choices here in the US like they do in European countries. So what you said is really important. Olive oil is a perishable food. Okay, these polyphenols are perishable and they have to be stored properly, under, cold or chilly conditions away from light and heat because that's bad for the polyphenols. And they also should be consumed within a year of the harvest date. So any olive oil that's worth your money is going to have a harvest date stamped on the label. Okay. It's also going to say exactly where it's from. It's going to say that it's from a certain place in one country. So, we'll do another episode on this, but just make
Yeah.
sure it's from one country, not pooled from many different countries. There's one harvest date. Don't look at the best by date. That has nothing to do with polyphenols. It has to do with other things. And make sure that there's a place that it comes from. It's a farm, kind of like when you buy wine, it comes from one place.
Yeah. It's actually really hard to find the harvest date. So, yeah, let's do an episode on it. It's an important enough food that it deserves that.
You mentioned that swapping olive oil in for butter. Now, this has been studied in scientific studies out of the cardiovascular research. What happens if you swap in a tablespoon of olive oil for what you would otherwise consume as butter or another fat, like lard or mayonnaise or something like that? And the reduction in cardiovascular risk was measurable. Okay. They were looking at reducing the risk of dying from a cardiovascular disease, the risk of dying from neurodegenerative disease, from having a heart attack or stroke, from dying from pulmonary disease with every 1 tablespoon swap. So in the US, the average intake of olive oil is 2 teaspoons a day, and it's probably not very fresh. And it's probably not very high in polyphenols. In Europe, the average intake is about a quarter cup a day, 4 tablespoons.
Annie, our next category is poultry. Poultry isn't usually described as brain enhancing. Why did you include it?
This is interesting. Okay, so poultry, chicken and turkey, basically, is part of the Mediterranean diet. Although some countries don't eat it at all, or some parts of Italy, for example, don't eat hardly any poultry. Depends on the region, but it's generally included in the Mediterranean diet. In the MIND diet, when Dr. Martha Claire Morris was choosing these 10 neuroprotective food groups, she included poultry, not because it's a brain healthy food. Oh, it does have some brain health benefits. She included it because she took out the red meat from the diet. She put that
Yeah.
into a different category of foods to limit or avoid. And when I asked her, I met with Dr. Martha Claire Morris shortly after the study came out in 2015 and before she passed away, which was tragic and horrible. She passed away way before her time. But I met her in that time period and I asked her, what's so brain healthy about chicken? And she said, well, it's really just practical. When they did the Mind Diet study, it was a large group of people living in the greater Chicago area. They were really afraid about compliance with the study. If they took out red meat from the diet, they felt like they needed to give them another meat. And they chose chicken as like kind of the best one. And so the guidelines are written in the Mind Diet study as 2 or more servings a week, which some people construe that to think that the more chicken you eat, the better. And it's not really true.
Interesting.
Not really true. So I include chicken in my pyramid, but I definitely have some caveats with it. I think it's a great source of protein. I think it has to be very strategically sourced. Some chicken is very high in saturated fat. And so it loses its health benefits because it's tipping your fat, intake into the wrong side of the scale. It does contain choline and lutein, kind of like eggs do, which are brain health nutrients. But there's nothing magical about eating chicken for brain health. It's a great source of protein. I like eating ground chicken and ground turkey and making meatballs out of it where I put zucchini and miso paste in it. So it makes it like even more brain healthy. But this is one of those food groups where if you don't eat chicken, you don't need to worry about including that in your diet for brain healthy reasons. Just make sure you're
Yeah.
getting enough protein from other sources.
Terrific. And our 10th category is a lot of fun because this, I think, over the years, the research on coffee has changed. What do we now think about coffee?
I love the new studies coming out about coffee. The largest study ever done came out at the end of 2024, and it looked at how much coffee you drink, how you take it, how you brew it, and your risk of dementia. And so now we have some very concrete things to say about coffee. And number one, coffee is full of polyphenols, okay? These brain health nutrients we've been talking about. It's just teeming with them. It's probably the most polyphenol rich beverage that's commonly consumed in the world. So that's good. But we also found out that if you put sugar in your coffee or artificial sweeteners, which we call non-nutritive sweeteners, or if you put creamers or any kind of coffee or creamer product, a lot of these are ultra processed foods, in your coffee, it steals away from the brain health benefits of the polyphenols. So we know that black
Dairy as well. Is that right?
coffee,
Dairy. Yeah.
yeah, and this is observational data, but it was a huge study out of the UK. But it's not so much ironclad that dairy steals polyphenols. We do have some studies to show that. But at the end of the day, the people that drank black coffee had a reduction in their dementia risk years later of as much as 40 to 50%. And this was if they drank their coffee black. If it was caffeinated, that was another thing that this study sorted out
Yeah.
was, is it the coffee or is it the caffeine? Well, it turns out it's both. Decaf coffee did not have this dementia protective effect. If caffeine doesn't agree with you, you don't have to start drinking caffeinated coffee. You can do lots of good things with your brain. You don't need to drink caffeinated coffee if it doesn't agree with you. But if you do, then you can be assured that it's a brain healthy habit. Another thing that came out of this paper was how you brew your coffee. And it was
Yes.
found that if you use a paper filter, retains its dementia protective qualities. But if you don't, then it doesn't. So how you brew your coffee is really important, and paper filters are the way to go.
Because we think that some chemical compounds are released from the coffee that are actually bad for your health, right? So the filter filters those out, right? Is that the
Right,
mechanism?
right. You've ever brewed like a really nice cup of coffee, it's like a little bit, there's a tiny bit of oil from the beans,
Mhm.
right? So coffee contains these bioactive substances that raise blood cholesterol. And
Mhm.
LDL cholesterol, especially the higher it is, the greater the risk for Alzheimer's or vascular dementia. So we want our cholesterol to be low and under target levels, and anything you can do to lower your cholesterol is good. And so if you go for your entire life drinking coffee that's unfiltered, it may be a factor in raising blood cholesterol over time. And so paper filters filter out these dipterines nicely. So this would be like an old school pour over. That's how I make my coffee. Or a French press is unfiltered.
Yeah.
Love your French press. You could just take an extra step and pour it over a cone that has a paper filter. Espresso's somewhere in the middle. Espresso comes from either like a mocha pot or espresso machine. It doesn't use a paper filter, but it does seem to filter out some of these dipterines. So the data on espresso is somewhere in the middle. So of course, as usual, the Italians get a pass. They can drink their
Well,
coffee any way they like and still have less.
totally. And
Um,
and I think you would probably say if you can stay away from the pods and K-cups and things that have it, like, packaged in plastics.
Yeah, I know they're so convenient. People love their pods. I get so many comments and messages about like, can I just keep drinking my pod? And it's probably fine. It's just one of the things you do as part of a brain healthy lifestyle. Not one thing is going to make or break your brain health. Okay. But pods you're probably not getting all the benefits from coffee, which is a plant food that is,
Yeah.
very particular the way you should consume it. And we should also give a shout out to tea. There was a recent study just a couple months ago that looked at coffee and tea, and drinking coffee 1 to 3 cups a day and tea I think it was 4 cups a day was found to be beneficial for brain health as well. And we know this from other studies. Green tea especially is very high in a particular polyphenol called EGCG that is great for brain health. So green tea is great, matcha is great. Any tea that comes from a Camellia sinensis plant which would be black, white, green, yellow, or oolong. All of these teas come from the same plant. This is what we're talking about when we talk about tea. It's not an infusion of ginger or an infusion of hibiscus flowers. They may have brain health benefits based on the plant or root or whatever it is that you're infusing, but we're talking about real tea here. Real tea is
Yeah,
beneficial for brain health.
this is amazing. Annie, when we zoom out, this is a lot. There's 10 categories. How do you recommend people start? I always think of adding something to my plate as opposed to eliminating something, and it ends up crowding out the bad stuff in a way.
Yeah.
Where do people start?
Yes. Well, you don't start with trying to do everything all at once. Okay. There's no such thing as a perfect brain healthy diet. It's all about progress over perfection. And so what I like people to think about is now you know what the game plan is. You know what the science is showing in terms of which foods are actually really good for your brain. And we'll talk about the ones that aren't in a different episode. You know the game plan. You can look at my pyramid. I like people to think about creating their own brain health pyramid. Okay. And start where you are. You can look at the food groups that you love. Okay. You're like, oh, yeah, I eat a salad every day. I got leafy greens. Oh, I love nuts. I'll make sure I snack on them 4 or 5 times a week. You got that. Berries, I'll make an effort to eat those more days than I am. And then you look at the ones that maybe you don't eat as much, like the beans or legumes or the whole grains or certain types of vegetables. And then you say, well, maybe I can introduce, maybe there's one food in that category that I love. Like, I don't eat many vegetables, but I do love beets. So maybe I'll just eat beets this week, like buy some beets and make something with them. So you slowly want to introduce and diversify within these food groups and just pick one thing a week to work on. Don't try to do it all at once. That can be just too overwhelming. And you don't want to overwhelm your gut microbiota too. You know, they're going to adapt with you as you introduce new foods, and they'll be able to digest and, spit out these really neuroprotective substances for you better.
Great. And I want to encourage our listeners to leave comments for us wherever you're watching or listening to us. We'd love to hear how your brain protective diets are going and what you're really enjoying to share that with our community.
Yes, absolutely. I so enjoy having you listening. We'll link back to the Substack so you can take a deeper dive on some of these topics. I just really appreciate you being here. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can follow us. You can subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you'd like to leave a review, that would be amazing. That would help more people discover the Brain Health Kitchen podcast. And we'll be back next time with more brain health talk. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Annie.
See you soon. Before you go, if anything we talked about today made you think about your own brain health, check out our founding sponsor, Better Brain. They built the world's first brain health and dementia prevention program that's covered by insurance. Expert coaching, a personalized action plan, and most people pay nothing out of pocket. Check it out at betterbrain.com/Annie. And if you're looking for reliable, science-backed brain health supplements, check out my other founding sponsor, NeuroReserve, at neuroreserve.com. Like I said in the beginning, if I only had to choose 2 brain health supplements to take for the rest of my life, it would be number 1, Relevate, which is their brain-specific omega-3 fatty acid, and Revanta, which is the purest creatine I have ever tried. It is a creatine monohydrate that dissolves completely in a glass of water. Check them out at neuroreserve.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. The Brain Health Kitchen podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The content shared on this podcast, including conversations with guests, is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Brain Health Kitchen podcast or its hosts.